Breaking news, it is official. Odell Beckham Jr. is headed to L.A., and he is going to play for the Rams. One of the favorites to win the Super Bowl, going to be added to that great wide receiver core, headlined by Cooper Kupp. You got Robert Woods out there, and now Odell Beckham Jr. This after the Rams went out and got Von Miller just a little more than a week ago. And Von Miller should be making his debut for the Rams soon. Odell Beckham Jr. is next up as he agrees to terms on a one-year deal, reportedly, with the LA Rams. The Rams making the official announcement on social media just moments ago. I want to bring in one of our insiders, Jonathan Jones, who told us a little while ago that it was more than likely going to be the Rams. JJ, why were the Rams the best fit for OBJ?
And it's interesting, Chris, that you say best fit, because in talking with league sources both last night and even today, I was told the best fit for OBJ on the football field would be the Green Bay Packers, where he'd be able to shine opposite Davante Adams. However, he signs with the LA Rams, and you have to think that this is a decision that OBJ made, one, in pursuit of a championship, which we know the Los Angeles Rams are well positioned for right now. Number two, for the opportunity to catch passes from a quality quarterback. Well, there are probably going to be fewer balls coming his way in LA than there would in Green Bay or potentially in New Orleans, for example. But we'll get to that a little bit more later on. There's also the personal aspect of it. Odell Beckham Jr., of course, a celebrity in the NFL, a celebrity in all of sports, goes where? To Los Angeles, a place where he already has a home in Southern California. So, as he moves on to the next chapter in his life, that also makes a lot of sense. And then, Chris, I'll just make the last point here that Odell Beckham Jr. has never been a free agent before, right? He was drafted by the Giants. He was traded to the Cleveland Browns. And then when he won his freedom, if you want to call it that, from the Cleveland Browns over this past weekend, what we saw from Odell Beckham Jr. and what we saw from a number of contending teams in the league was a courting process, something that he had never experienced before in the NFL. And as I'm told, the Los Angeles Rams seemingly came out of nowhere as early as late last night into today. Very clearly, things heated up between the two sides. They were able to strike a deal, a reported one-year deal, waiting to see the terms on that deal. But Odell Beckham Jr., a Los Angeles Ram.
Yeah, when you look at that offense, JJ, I know they're coming off that disappointing loss last week when the offense was completely shut down. But did they need him? I guess that's the question I'd be asking if I'm a Rams fan. Maybe you're happy, okay, fine, we have another guy to throw it to, but we know it can be a little bit combustible when you get a guy like OBJ in there, and you mentioned it. A lot of balls aren't going to be coming his way, at least you wouldn't think, with guys like Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods already in there.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp is on his way to being a first-team All-Pro. And we have seen over the course of 8 or 9 games that Robert Woods gets heavily involved in that offense, every 2 or 3 games. Those guys are going to have to make way for Odell Beckham Jr., and those guys have not won a Super Bowl. And so they want whoever's going to come on and help them win a Super Bowl. This should be a selfless team. Now, we know that Robert Woods was unhappy a couple of weeks into the season where he said, listen, I got to be more involved in the offense. Sean McVay spent that entire week getting him more involved. And then in that game, I'm forgetting what team it was, but it was the game where he had double-digit catches on double-digit targets. That's what Sean McVay wanted to do and will do for so many of his players when he deems it significant and when he needs to. You go back to Deshaun Jackson, a guy who signed, who went back to his hometown to play. And he said, listen, guys, I don't care if you guys are going to win a Super Bowl. I want to get the ball. And if I'm not getting the football, I'm out of here. And so they released him, of course, tried to trade him, but he was never going to get traded. And now he is with the Vegas Raiders. But we see right there, it is the Cooper Kupp show. He's going to have to minimize his role a little bit. The Robert Woods is going to have to minimize his role a little bit and make room for Odell Beckham Jr. But this is a Rams team that loves 11 personnel. Give me one running back, give me one tight end, and let's send our receivers out there. And Matthew Stafford finally getting a complement of weapons, not just throwing to Calvin Johnson and only Calvin Johnson anymore. He has some top-tier guys. And listen, as everyone has been telling me ever since the past 7, 8, 9 days when Odell Beckham Jr. really started making noise to get out of Cleveland, he still has something in the tank. Is he the Odell Beckham Jr. of 2013, 2014? Maybe not, but that's okay because he's really, really good still. And so we're going to see what he has once he starts to get ingratiated into that offensive scheme out in Los Angeles.
Now, if you're someone who has Cooper Kupp or Robert Woods on your fantasy team, you might be a little disappointed right now. We're going to get some fantasy advice on that in just a little bit. But, JJ, we've been told by all accounts that the Rams don't really have much money left. They went out and they got Von Miller, but against the cap. How do you think that they came up with enough money to stay under that cap and still have enough money to pay OBJ to finish out this season?
Yeah, salary cap can be a funny thing. It can be real up until the point that it's not real. And, you know, teams will find money. The New Orleans Saints have been finding money in the mattress for the last 8 years. The LA Rams have obviously said, we don't need draft picks. We want blue chip players. They drafted Aaron Donald. They traded 2 firsts for Jalen Ramsey. They traded 2 firsts for Matthew Stafford. We know that they just traded a 2nd and a 3rd for Von Miller. And now today they signed Odell Beckham Jr., who had an interesting sort of contract agreement and settlement, financial settlement with the Cleveland Browns. So, you know, we'll have to dig a little bit deeper on just how they made this work. And I'm sure that there's going to be some interesting contract mechanics and gymnastics, if you will. But the Rams are absolutely all in. They've been all in. They know, hey, all that matters is the Lombardi. We get the Lombardi, we'll worry about everything else later. They are in full pursuit of being the second team to play a Super Bowl in their home stadium and win, obviously following the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think you have to, right now, put the LA Rams in. If you're a betting person, you have to put the Rams in there from the NFC right now.
Though they still are looking up at the Arizona Cardinals in the division and in the NFC. What kind of a message, though, do you think the Rams are sending going out and getting Von Miller and now bringing in Odell Beckham Jr. on the other side of the ball?
Well, if you are a player on the Rams, you love it. You say, all right, I see what Les Snead, the general manager, and what Sean McVay and their whole group is doing, that they are going to be in on every deal. It's easy for GMs to say that, but the Rams are actually doing that, and they're doing that more than anyone else. It makes you almost feel okay about maybe taking a little less money to make sure that you can stay in pursuit of a championship. That is what the Rams are hoping to build. And I don't know if guys are going to be wanting to give back money or anything like that. I'm not trying to take money out of any of the players' pockets, but when they see that there is an aggressive front office, when the head coach is in lockstep with the general manager and that they are in full pursuit of a championship, probably more so, or at least in sort of this Madden-esque way that we have sort of grown up to see, that these teams aren't treating draft picks like gold. That, okay, we can use them as trade chips, and we are going to use them as such to secure fantastic players that we believe are actually going to make a difference. Not that we're going to make them homegrown. No. That stuff's for the birds. That's for teams that are trying to rebuild and create a Rome. We are in Rome right now. We're going to make sure that it doesn't burn. That's what these LA Rams are doing. And that's, if you're a player on this team, you have to absolutely love it.
Pete Prisco has said time and time and again here on HQ that Odell Beckham Jr. is one of those guys that is more name than he is game. But he's still 29 years old, just turned 29 a few days ago. Not that old. What are you hearing? You kind of hinted at it a little bit, how some people are telling you that he does have a lot more left in the tank. What are you hearing about what he still does bring to the game and can bring to the Rams now?
Yeah, listen, he's battled some health issues this season, and any sort of soft tissue injury you're going to have to worry about with a guy of his size and speed. He's dealt with the shoulder injuries throughout this season. I loved a couple of weeks ago knowing that he wanted out of Cleveland, that he gave it his all when the Cleveland Browns absolutely needed him out there, that he went out there and he played when he easily could have said, listen, guys, I'm not feeling it. An absolute gamer, and that said a lot about the character of Odell Beckham Jr. If Pete or anyone else wants to say, all right, a little bit more name than game, you know, you'd understand it to a point because, yeah, he played for the New York Giants. He made that spectacular catch. Had he made that catch for the Jacksonville Jaguars and it wasn't on national television, then maybe Odell doesn't become the name that he ultimately became. I'm not sure that when Odell retires that we're going to mention him as one of the top 5 greatest wide receivers of all time, even though a couple of years into his career it seemed that he was on that track, and then, of course, derailed by injuries, derailed by less closer quarterback play. All of that stuff has to be considered. But you mentioned it, just turned 29 years old. When he's healthy, he can still be absolutely a top 10 wide receiver in this league. And now that you have Cooper Kupp humming with Matthew Stafford, now that you have Sean McVay in lockstep with his quarterback, you have an offensive line that's holding up well. You add an Odell Beckham Jr. into that. This is a team that, okay, it almost doesn't matter what the defense is going to be. Give them Kansas City's defense, and let's go have a shootout. Let's go be the Phoenix Suns of old. Just run up and down the court. You guys want to score 110? Well, we'll score 120. But that's the thing, is that the Rams' defense is actually good. So maybe it'll be a shootout, and you will realize that you don't have any bullets in your gun because you can't fire against this defense. I think it is a fantastic move for the Rams. I think it sends the best message possible to the current players, and really, I think it's a warning shot to everyone, certainly in the NFC West, as we sort of saw this arms race. We saw it with the Arizona Cardinals in the offseason. We've seen it with the Seattle Seahawks. The San Francisco 49ers have done their best, but they've been up against the cap. But the Rams said, you know what? Y'all can be up against the cap all you want. We're going to figure out ways to make sure that we're not going to use the excuse up against the cap. We will find the money. We will figure out the cap mechanics. That's what they've done with Les Snead and his staff there over the past several years, but certainly this season.
The day began with Cam Newton going back to Carolina. Now Odell Beckham Jr. is going to L.A. to play for the Rams. JJ is there just north of Miami to cover the Ravens and the Dolphins tonight. Inside the NFL exclusively on Paramount Plus. New episodes every Tuesday night at 9:30 Eastern Time.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.